Here's the overview page in Cloud Pak for Data. This gives me a good summary of all the activity going on in my project. For the workshop, we'll be spending our time in the Assets page. Right now, the project has no assets, so we need to create one. We need to create a Jupyter notebook. The samples for this workshop are available in public GitHub. So to create this new notebook, I'm going to click the tab labeled From URL. Then over in GitHub, I'm going to copy the raw URL of the first of the two workshop notebooks. Next, I'm going to give my new notebook a reasonable name. And then, very importantly, I need to select the correct runtime for the notebook to use. Because we're going to be using the Watson NLP library, you need to make sure to select this runtime right here, Decision Optimization plus Natural Language Processing runtime. Great, I'm going to go ahead and create that. Jupyter notebooks are a great way to do some Python programming without having to create a whole file and running a whole file all at once. In notebooks, you can run just a few lines of code at a time. In this notebook, you can see some HTML that has a little bit of information and some instructions, and you can see some cells that have Python code in them. There's a comment at the top of each cell giving it a number, so we can refer to those numbers to keep track of where we're supposed to be in the workshop. The first thing we need to do is to paste your workshop room name and your workshop key as strings into cell number 1. When you came into the workshop, you were given your room name and your workshop key on little pieces of paper. So refer to that, type in your room name and your workshop key, and then click the Run button in the menu at the top of the notebook. In this notebook, we're going to be doing 6 things today. First, we're going to create a mural that has some sticky notes in it for us to process. Then we're going to read back the position information and the IDs of those sticky notes that we just created so that we have data that we can pass to the MURAL API. Then we're going to analyze the sentiment of comments on those sample sticky notes. And then we're going to color code the stickies in the mural based on the sentiment. Next, we'll identify nouns in the comments on the sticky notes. That's a good way to figure out what the comments are about. And finally, we'll visualize a little chart showing the most common nouns in the sticky notes. That's a way that you can kind of tell what are people talking about the most. In order to do some analysis of sticky notes in a mural, we need to put some sticky notes into the mural. A helper web service has been deployed for this workshop to make this first step easier. So in step 1.1, cell number 2, there is a routine called Create Mural, and all we need to do is run that cell to define that routine, and then run cell number 3 to create an empty mural. Cell number 4 prints some information about the mural that you just created. In particular, you can see a link. It says, click to open mural in a new tab. So if you click that, notice that in a new tab in your browser, the mural web interface is there. The first thing to notice is that the way the link has been generated, you are a visitor in the mural. There's different types of access in Mural, and for the workshop, you'll be a visitor to the murals that you're working in. So you have the option to give yourself a name, but you could just keep the default. I guess I'll be visiting Rhino as the default. And anyway, when you put a name or not, and then click enter so that you get into the mural. Now there's some interesting pop-up help that you'll see, some tours. In a nutshell, if I zoom out here, you can use the minus sign and the plus sign to zoom in and zoom out. If I zoom out here, in a nutshell, you can see here is my canvas. And if I double click, that can put a sticky note. And if I type some text, then that can put some text in my sticky note. And I can hit the delete button on my keyboard to delete that sticky note. So back in our notebook in step 1.2, We're going to load some sample sticky note data from a JSON file in public GitHub. So if you run cell number 5, then that will pull in that JSON file from GitHub. And if we run cell number 6, then we can just look and see what does that data look like. And you can see here it's an array, and each item in the array is data about a sticky. So the X and Y position, the height, and the comment on the sticky, for example. Then in step 1.3, in cell number 7, there's a routine defined that will take the sticky note data from that JSON structure and then call the MURAL API to paste sticky notes into the mural you just created. So run cell number 7 to define those routines, and then if you see in cell number 8, the first thing it does is pause for 5 or sleep for 5 seconds. That's so that you can click run for cell number 8, and then you have 5 seconds to get over to the tab where the mural is so you can watch as the routine adds the sample sticky notes. Let's do that now. There it is. There's the sample mural that we will be doing the NLP analysis with today. The story behind this sample mural is this. Imagine that your team had a celebration day. The team went out for lunch, and then the team went and played mini golf somewhere. After the event was over, the team lead asked everybody on the team to go into this mural and paste their comments about or feedback about the day in sticky notes. Their comments about the lunch part of the day can go in the lunch area, and then their comments about mini golf can go in the mini golf area. So that's the story behind this sample mural. You can see the lunch comments are about the menu and about the service and about the food, and you can see there's some comments in the mini golf area, some general comments saying, you know, mini golf is fun, or maybe mini golf is lame, and comments about the course and so on. So that is the mural we will be analyzing using NLP in our notebook. In step 2.1, we're going to use the MURAL API to read the widgets from that mural. Now, it seems kind of weird that we had JSON that listed some data to put the stickies there in the first place, so why do we have to read them again now? But the answer is because we need to read live data from the mural so we have an identifier for each sticky so we can reference it to move it around or change its color or whatever. So that's why we have to turn around and read the mural now. So cell number 9 defines a routine for using the MURAL API to read from a mural. Just need to run that cell to define the routine. And then cell number 10 actually reads the widgets from the mural. Cell number 11 just prints out the data we got back from the mural. And you'll see there's a ton of information in there for each of these sticky notes now. There's timestamps, there's the ID of the person who put it there, there's which is the API ID. There's all kinds of information there. There's timestamps, there's styling information. You can read through that just for your interest, but that's all the information you get back about sticky notes when you read from a mural using the API. So in step 2.2, now we're going to do a data science kind of thing. We're in a Python notebook here, so we should not be working in JSON structures. We should be using a data frame. That's a data science way to do it, and if we're in a Python notebook, we should do it that way. And so cell number 12 takes the widget data that we got by reading the mural and just reshapes it and puts it in a data frame. So there you can see the columns of our data frame are the identifier, the live identifier of the sticky in the mural, its X and Y position, its width and its height, and the text that was the comment in the sticky. And now this is in this table-like structure, this data frame. Now we're set up to actually begin doing our natural language processing analysis. The first thing we'll do in step 3 is analyze the sentiment of the comments in the sticky notes. So in cells 13 and 14, We just need to set up the Watson Natural Language Processing library and pull in some default language models from that library. Each of these cells takes a little while to run, so keep your eye on that circle in the upper right-hand corner so that you know whether it's still running or not. And each cell does also have a print statement saying the word done, so that's another way you can tell when it's finished. So let's run cells 13 and 14. Cell 15 defines a routine that calls the Watson Natural Language Processing library functions to do the syntax analysis of a given comment. Cell 16 runs a little test of our routine. So our routine called analyze comment, if we pass the sentence, walking in the woods makes me so happy and relaxed. That's a pretty positive comment, right? So if we pass that comment to our analyze comment routine, then you can see the output we get back includes a score, so that the higher the number, the more positive sentiment is. We see a text label, so it would be positive, neutral, or negative. And you can see a little bit more detailed information about the analysis that was done. So that's the raw output that you get from the Watson Natural Language Processing library. In cell 17, we define a routine that will enable us to take our analyze comment routine and apply it to our data frame. So let's run cell 17 to define that. And then in cell 18 and 19, this is just a little test to show you how the data frame would be affected by our routine. So in cell 18, what it's doing is it's just grabbing 2 rows from our data frame as just a little test data frame. And then cell 19 is calling our routine and applying it to this test data frame. So you can see the difference. Our test data frame has 2 columns added. After we call our routine, you can see there's a sentiment column and a sentiment score column that got added to our little test data frame. So in cell 20, we're going to apply that to our whole data frame with all the comments from our mural. There, now you can see it all, and you can take a second to just go through and see how good a job did the model do. When you read those comments, do they seem to you like they're positive, neutral, or negative? And what kind of score or sentiment did the model give to those comments? Now, trying to understand the overall sentiment of the feedback just by looking at that data frame is kind of difficult. So ideally, what we would like to do is visualize that sentiment analysis somehow. And we can do that by using the MURAL API to color code the sticky notes based on their sentiment. So that's what we'll do in step 4. Cell 21 just defines some routines that call the MURAL API to change the color of the sticky notes. And you can see in cell 22, there's that same little trick again. There's a 5-second delay that gives you time to go over to the tab where your mural is so you can watch as the color of the stickies change. Now you can see that the sticky notes that had a positive comment on them are yellow, and the sticky notes that have a more neutral comment on them are a little bit darker. They're like a green color. And then the sticky notes that had the negative sentiment comments are a darker blue color. So right away, you get a sense that there's a lot of yellow sticky notes there. It seems like there's a lot of positive comments. Let's keep going with our natural language processing analysis and start looking at the nouns in those sticky note comments. Cell 23 shows an example of the raw output you get back from the Watson Natural Language Processing library when you do syntax analysis for a given sentence. So in this case, the sentence is, "I really enjoyed going out to lunch today." When we use the Watson Natural Language Processing library to do syntax analysis of that sentence, you can see that it returns an array of tokens. Each word in the sentence is a token. So you can see I, which is a pronoun, and then really, and then enjoyed, and then going, and then out, and so on. So you can see that it goes through each word in the sentence and gives you syntax information about that word. So in step 5.2, we can see cell 24 defines a routine, get part of speech, that simplifies calling the Watson Natural Language Processing library. And then cell 25 just runs a little test to show what does our get part of speech routine actually do. And when we run that cell, you can see it just makes lists. It takes the words from the sentence, I really enjoyed going out to lunch today. It takes those words and he puts them into lists based on their part of speech. So that's what the get POS routine does. And if we look at cell number 26, it creates a test data frame again and then calls that routine. And you can see now in our test data frame, there's two new columns, one called nouns and one called adjectives. So that's what our routine is doing. So in cell 27, we're going to do that to the whole data frame for all the stickies in the mural. There again, when that runs, you can look at the text. It's in the middle column or so now. And then you can look at the list of nouns that were pulled out and the list of adjectives that were pulled out. So now in step 6, once again, trying to get a sense for the results just by looking at the data frame is too difficult. So in step 6, we're going to visualize those results again. And this time we're going to do that in a chart here in the notebook. So the first thing we need to do is count the unique nouns and see how many times they appear. Cell 28, we define a routine called count nouns that will get that information for us. And in cell 29, we call that routine to list all the nouns and show how many times they're repeated. And you can see that there's a few that are repeated multiple times, and then there are a bunch that only appear once. So in cell 30, we call the routine again with a different parameter to say, show us all of the nouns that happen more than once. So that's a more manageable list, but also more meaningful. Then in step 6.2, in cell number 31, we define a bunch of routines there to actually plot those nouns. So finally, we get to step 6.3, and cell number 32 will call our plot words routine, and you can see there now a chart that basically says, here's what people talked about the most, and we're doing that by counting the nouns. So you can see there's promise here. You can see how this could be useful, but you can also see that it's not quite good enough yet. So for example, lots of people mentioned the noun restaurant. That makes sense because we went to a restaurant for lunch. But from an analysis perspective, the word restaurant is basically noise. I mean, yes, I know everybody's talking about a restaurant. We went to a restaurant for lunch. So counting the word restaurant is kind of a waste of time. It's not nuanced enough analysis. And similarly, the phrase golf course, that's really referring to one thing. They're both, the golf course is one thing. So you wouldn't want to count the word golf and the word course separately. From an analysis perspective, that's not helpful. So even though you can see that counting nouns seems like it's almost going to work from an analysis perspective, but there's something else we can do that will work even better, and that's what we'll do in part 2 of this workshop.